Alrighty, folks. Thank you for joining us here today for this session. And today we're going to be covering some of the things to kind of be aware of and some best practices, tips, tricks, some things that you should know about creating we always like to say, complete and a compelling proposal package for SBIR and STTR opportunities. In today's session, we're going to cover a few different things. First of all, just a really quick overview about SBIR, just to make sure we're all on the same page about what these programs can do. Then we're going to talk about typical proposal packages. So what goes into them, what you need to be aware of, and then some best practices for making sure that you have a proposal package that speaks towards agency needs, answers review criteria, and kind of at the end of the day is going to generate some interest and grab the reviewer's attention and make sure that they really want to fund what your innovative idea is. But to get us started, let's do a quick review. So a quick overview on the SBIR and STTR programs. So what are these programs? Well, at the heart of it, SBIR and STTR think of them as economic development opportunities. They are ways for the federal government to inject research and development dollars into your small business as you're trying to move from idea to concept to prototype to commercial success. Now, these programs are really important because they're a way to keep the innovation ecosystem going, to kind of spur along the idea that we're developing really great things. Everybody always likes to say small businesses innovate, large businesses acquire. And this is one of those programs that helps keep that pathway open, let's call it, because small businesses do innovate. But innovation can be tricky. Innovation can take resources that people may not have access to. Innovation can take a long time to actually turn into something that is product worthy, let's call it. And these programs provide that foundation. Small businesses really do drive the economy of the US and drive a lot of the workforce of the US, but they need some assistance. The government wants to spur that entrepreneurship. They want to spur that creative process, those creative thoughts, and they use these programs to do just that. Now, there are some requirements to actually be able to participate in SBIR and STTR. One is these programs are for-profit small businesses. So for-profit, you have to be set up as an actual for-profit business. You don't need to be a certain type of business. You don't have to be, an LLC or an S Corp or B Corp or C Corp or whatever the letter Army Corps is. But you do have to be organized as for-profit. You have to be a business generating a profit, or at least wanting to generate a profit. And you also have to be small. Now, according to the SBA, the definition of a small business is less than 500 employees. And, particularly here in New Mexico, it seems like a pretty big business, but that's their definition. As long as you are a for-profit business with less than 500 employees and majority owned and controlled by, US citizens, legal residents, resident aliens, just somebody that is, in the US primarily, then you could be able to participate in these programs. And the US one often throws people for a loop. They go, well, I don't get what this criteria is. They just want to make sure that whoever is kind of in control of the business, whoever is wanting to lead the business, whatever the focus or idea is for the business, that it is primarily, coming out of the United States. And that's really just the heart of it. Now, it is a gated program. So you move from a phase 1 to a phase 2 to a phase 3, where phase 1 sets up, okay, this is the feasibility. We're really trying to test this out. You're trying to kick the tires, make sure this is going to work. And then once it's actually feasible, you move on to a phase 2. You're developing that market-ready prototype, that thing that you can actually show people, that showcase where you go, this is what I have, this is why this might be interesting to you. Let me demonstrate it to you. Let me switch you to an actual active customer. And then the phase 3 is that kind of commercialization. It is not directly SBIR funded, but there are opportunities for direct funding through maybe Department of Defense opportunities, maybe procurement cycles and contracts, things like that. And at the end of the day, why pursue SBIR funding? Well, it's the government seed program. They want to invest in the idea, but they don't take a stake in it. It's non-dilutive, it's risk-free, it's not a loan, you don't pay it back. And they don't want a portion of your business just to say, okay, well, we think you can make it, we want you to grow. We're going to put some, hobbles on you first. We're going to, restrict you a little bit. And it's very similar to what you would do for doing things like third-party investment. You're going to put together that business plan. You're going to put together that budget of what you need. You're going to put together that idea of how you want to move forward. And it's also one of those things where it's a great mechanism to continue doing that research, to move from that basic to applied research. Because that's what these programs are about, that applied research. They want you to be moving towards an actual product that's going to solve a problem, something that's going to address an unmet need in the marketplace. And for the question, why are topics so limiting, restricting innovative development? Dana did answer the question, but it also just depends on what their focus is. If it's somebody like National Science Foundation, well, it's in their name. They're about science. They want to fund things that are scientific, things that are, kind of science-based. If it's someone like NASA, they are a contracting agency with very specific problems. They fund things that are related to space, things that are related to human habitation. So it depends on the agency. And Peter, I'm not sure of your question. You say an electric generator and the DOE doesn't have topics. Well, it depends on the type of electricity you're generating. How are you generating that electricity? With granting agencies, you're not going to find a one-to-one match. You're going to have to think broader or from a higher perspective about what you're creating. If it's an electric generator, does it create a stronger power source? Is it uninterruptible? What is it that is interesting about that? And then also for DOE, it is 2 different release cycles. So their first release cycle is, which is coming up, is very higher level scientific concepts. And the second release cycle, which is towards the end of the year, is more open innovation and more open energy. But it just depends on the agency. You cannot brush a broad stroke or a broad brush across the SBIR and STTR programs. Each agency, and there are 12 agencies, have their own focus, have their own ideals, have their own proposal formats, have their own funding levels, have their own periods of performance. It's almost like there are 12 different programs. So if you want to find out more about, finding your fit and making your agency match, reach out to someone from the NMFAST team. Contact information will be in this slideshow. And this is being recorded. The presentation and the recording will go out to everybody after this. Elliot, for your question, confidentiality from proposal submission through research through findings. Do you mean for things like counting for public disclosure? Because technically, one, you probably want to limit the amount of proprietary information that you put into a proposal. And 2, With the proposal and the review process, reviewers are bound by an NDA with that agency. So there can be some wiggle room for counting it as public disclosure. It's also one of the things that a lot of people, whenever they put together a proposal and send it in, sometimes they'll put together a provisional patent on what they have, but it, again, just varies by the agency on, is this going to be open or a outside review process, or is it going to be a closed review process where it's just agency and federal government people that are reviewing it? You'll want to look at the different agencies and see what their review process is. And you'll probably want to have a discussion with one of their program managers, or at least an IP attorney, on would that count as public disclosure for protections and patenting. Let's see. Okay, so let's kind of go into some just really quick looks at proposals and proposal development. So no matter who you are putting together your information for, no matter the agency that you're looking at, you're going to have to develop a proposal for them. Again, it's that funding that is that non-dilutive investment, and it is that kind of seed funding, that investment style that you would go to any venture capitalist, angel investor. Any investor is going to want to know, well, why do you need this money? What are you going to do with it? How is this going to help your business move forward? And for SBIR and STTR, it's going to be that very similar concept. You're going to put together a proposal, and it's going to say, this is what I want to do first. This is how this is going to help me establish that there's some legs here, there's some merit, there's some ways to move forward. This is what I would do with the money and the funding that you allow for. And ultimately, this is what I'm going to come up with at the end of whatever this phase is. You have to grow and nurture that seed, though. You have to prove that you're the right farmer, that you have the tools, that you have the resources to grow that development, to take it to that next stage, to take it to that next phase of development. And, but how do you do that? How do you prove that? How do you show that you have those resources, that knowledge, that expertise to take it to the next level? Well, you generate a proposal package. And proposal packages are going to be very different based on, kind of the agency and based on what you need to put together. The format and content of what goes into a proposal is going to, highly mirror what you should be putting together for a business plan anyways. So who's your customer? Who's your market? Why do they fit? Why are they going to move this forward? Why would they be interested in purchasing this in the future? These programs are about developing innovative products. So there needs to be some way to get to market. There needs to be some way to generate revenues. And whether your market is, this is sitting on every end cap of every Walmart across America, or you're licensing this to somebody to actually create and sell themselves, or if it's a digital service, as long as you're generating revenues from it, then you have market potential. And that's all that these agencies want you to be able to demonstrate. There is some potential. There is some way to actually make money based off of this idea. And proposal packages, again, do vary based off of the agency. I always like to tell people there are 3 types of proposal packages. There's an NIH proposal, because NIH does their own thing. There's an NSF proposal because of the way that they kind of format it, the sections that you have. And then there's everybody else. Because besides NIH, you're going to be putting together very similar information for everyone else. What is this market? How can I get there? How can I reach it? What is that pain point that I'm addressing? What is that work plan for me to move forward? What are the things that I need to do right now to show that this is feasible, to show that this is viable, to show that this is something that can ultimately be created? And a lot of that is going to be kind of standard information. You're going to have that work plan. You're going to have that reasoning. You're going to have a budget because, again, they want to know what you're going to use the money for. Why do you need to purchase this right now? Why do you need to put effort into this part of research right now? Why do you need these labor hours to do this, to do X, to get to Y, at the moment? And that's all kind of across every single agency. Now, there are some differences too, whether you need to do something like a letter of intent, whether you have a separate document that's a commercialization plan or commercialization strategy, or whether it fits into your 10-page or your 15-page or your 20-page or your 25-page narrative. Those are all narrative links. So there is a lot of variation between what different agencies require and how you approach that information. But even with all that variation and all that just kind of confusion, there are some really basic best practices that you need to follow, no matter the agency, no matter their format, no matter their length, and no matter their requirements. And this is just a really kind of quick timeline process to show what is something to set a goal for. How do you set your sights on this? One of the things we always like to remind people of is proposals are a process, and they're a process in and of themselves. You should sit down and, flesh out some ideas and, start to develop it. Don't wait till the last minute to go, well, this is going to be due tomorrow. I haven't done anything. I can knock out a 15-page proposal. I mean, maybe you can. That's probably not going to be a good proposal. You're not going to have time to, fully bake it and find those citations, find those resources that show that you know what you're talking about, find those things that you can actually address. So that's why you want to break it down into a long tail process and kind of take off and bite off small chunks that you can chew on and, savor and swallow and go, okay, I did this. Let me move on to this little thing. You want to have those little rewards and go, okay, I completed this thing. I completed this one small stage. I completed this one aspect of this. I feel like I accomplished something. Let me continue to move forward. But getting started. So whenever you're getting started, you're starting a construction project. Let's just think of it that way. Because the first thing you want to do is you want to throw together a really quick outline. It's going to be a really quick or a really good framework for development, something that you establish and you go, okay, this gives me a solid foundation. This gives me a base to grow from. This is something that I can actually do, something that I can move forward with, something that I can take to the next step. And there's a couple of things particularly that you want to look at with innovation, commercial potential, and the work plan. Those are, again, going to be the three things that no matter which agency, you're going to have to speak to in some fashion. So that is going to be your building blocks. That's going to be the strong foundation that you start. And you're going to lock down at least a couple of data points, couple of nuggets of information that you go, okay, I can actually grow from here. One thing that we always recommend to people is create 2 foundational sentences. And in those sentences, you're going to cover what's unique about what you're doing, who cares, and why do they care? Because those are the 3 aspects right there. What's unique? Why is this innovative? Who cares? Who's your customer? Why do they care? What's that value proposition? What's that benefit that you bring to the table? You start to lay out that and you go, okay, I have these 2 sentences. I have my innovation. Let me actually expand on this a little bit. What exactly is different about what I'm doing? Why has nobody approached this before? Why is this something that only I and my team can figure out? And you're going to expand. And then you're going to start to knock out things like the background of the innovation, the significance of the innovation, the team and the resources that you bring to the table. why it's your team and your resources that can actually move this forward. And then for the who cares, who is the customer? What is that pain point? What is that market opportunity? Why are they a potential customer? How deep is this customer channel? That's going to start to lay out a lot of that commercial stuff that pretty much every agency but NIH is very, very interested in. Because again, they want commercial solutions. They want you to be able to sell this or generate revenues for your company at some point based off of what you've created. And this is why something like even a quick 2 sentences starts you down a really good pathway to continue to develop, continue to refine. And just like you saw from that timeline process, you're going to do this kind of iteratively. You're going to start, you're going to build, you're going to refine, you're going to put more data down, you're going to flesh this out a bit more. You're going to actually go, okay, how do I get this? How do I do this? How do I grow this? How do I make sure that I'm speaking towards what this agency wants and that this is going to be compelling to whoever's going to review it? And now that you have that foundation, it gives you a really great way to start to do things like look at your scope. Particularly in a phase 1, scope is a very, very big issue. Scope is just essentially, what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? And what are the resources that are going to be required to do these activities during this 6 to 12 month period? And for anybody that's ever seen a lot of different development resources that are out there, one of the things that they always point towards, and a lot of the agencies point towards, is the biggest failure point for a phase 1 proposal is it's overscoped. People go, well, I can do all these great things, and this is everything I can do because I'm a small business. I can put a lot of effort into this. I can work 80, 120, 160-hour work weeks and get this done. But agencies know that stuff's going to come up. You got a business to run because they want businesses to be viable. This isn't just some researcher going out there and saying, yeah, I can plunk at this and maybe I'll figure something out. No, they want a strong business that's going to go, I can create a product out of this. I can be successful with this. I can actually sell this. So whenever you're looking at scope for a phase 1, always look for maybe 3 objectives, because that's the sweet spot. That's the, okay, 6 to 12 months, roughly $250,000. I just need to establish feasibility. Here are the things that I can do to say, this has merit, because that's what you're doing during this phase 1, is you're just establishing that there's some merit here. You're not getting to the goal line. You're putting your foot down on that pathway towards that race. You're starting that marathon and going, I can continue this run. I can continue this. There's something here that points me that I'm going in the right direction. And now what that right direction is, you have to figure out, you have to define. It's your innovation, your business. But at least being able to go, there's something here. There's something that's truthful about my discovery. There's something that I can actually refine here, that I can move forward with. That's what you're trying to do. So that's why, for your phase 1, your scope is probably about 2 to 3 things that go, okay, this is the biggest problem I'm going to face with getting this to an actual quote unquote product, something that can drive some revenues. I have to be able to show that I can overcome this problem, that I can overcome this risk. And as you're starting to flesh out that scope, just like everything else, it's going to be very iterative based off of your budget. Some agencies, it's a $275,000 phase 1, which is NSF. Some agencies, maybe it's $100,000 phase 1, just like Department of Transportation. You have to figure out, how am I going to use that money? What can I functionally do with this amount of funding over this 6 to 12 month period to show that there is some validity here. There is some stuff that I can do to kind of grow and move forward. And it's fine to not get your scope right out of the gate. In fact, if you get your scope right out of the gate, lots of different companies want to hire you. Go talk to them, because you're almost never going to do that. You're going to look at it and go, okay, I have this. This is what I can do. Let me start to put some numbers down. Oh man, I am way over budget, or I'm way under budget. There's more money I can capture here. And it's a process. You're going to look at this. You're going to go, okay, here's my budget. Here's what I've scoped out. That was a little bit too much. Let me go back here. Everybody does this. So don't freak out that I put down my scope and man, it was just way over budget, way over scoped for this phase one. I just don't know how I'm going to move forward. You haven't submitted it yet. You got all the time in the world to re-go back and look at this and, remove some items, maybe remove some hours, maybe go, okay, I don't need to dive down deep into this. I don't need to do 20 experiments or 20 tests here. Maybe I can do 4 to show that there is validity. This is feasible. Because remember, feasibility. Now, so now that you have a foundation you can grow from, now that you've actually started to flesh out a scope, start to want to flesh out a proposal and start to want to write the proposal. So what do you do whenever you're starting to write a proposal? You're getting ready to argue. And people go, well, why am I arguing? Well, you're arguing because nobody knows you. These agencies don't know anything about your business. They don't know anything about your innovation. You're arguing that you matter. You're arguing that what you're creating is going to change the world in some aspect. It's really just argumentation, though, is how you're presenting information. It's not that you're getting into a heated debate and, calling them names and things like that. It's just, okay, this is why I matter. Let me give you the evidence, and then let me expand upon that. Because that's what you're trying to do as you're writing, as you're developing information, as you're putting kind of data together to form that knowledge, to transform it into learning. You're doing things like pulling in, kind of that logic. Well, here is what science says. Here is what the data says. Here are the facts about this. And then you're bringing in maybe things like emotion. Why does this actually matter? What are going to be the impacts here? Why is this going to, change people's lives? Why is this going to revolutionize this type of, product or service? Why is this going to totally disrupt this market and make it better for everybody? And then you're talking about, why do you have the team? Why do you have the expertise? Why do you have the resilience to continue forward with this project? Because anybody that's ever worked on a project knows that projects go off the rails. No project ever works out exactly as it was intended from day one to the ultimate completion of that project. You're going to get socked in the mouth. So why do you have the capability and the resilience to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and get back in there for the good fight, though? And that's that character. Who are you? What do you bring to the table? Why have you been through this process before? Why is your business sound? Why do you maybe have some really great advisors that you can actually tap into to say, yeah, this is a good practice for a business, or this is not a good practice for a business, or, oh God, don't do that. That's the kind of information that you want to be able to showcase, because that is that argumentation. You're giving them the facts, you're showing them why it matters, and you're showing them how you can actually, kind of put your work, or put your money where your mouth is. Yeah, well, that's the saying there. But you're just being able to showcase that I can actually do this. I have the resources. I have the capabilities. Or I know where to tap into those resources. I can bring people to the table. I can draw other stuff in. I can draw more partners in to actually continue this development. But you have to have facts to do that. So where do you go and get those facts? When do you start gathering information? Well, start gathering information now. Even if you're looking at, an agency that's not going to release until the maybe January of next year, start gathering data. With these programs, you can never have too much data. You can never have too much reasoning. And when it's that reasoning, though, what you're going to do is you're going to follow what's an assert and defend model here. You're going to assert. You're going to say, here is what everybody says. Here is what these highly regarded peer-reviewed publications say about the science behind this, or why this potentially works, or why this is something that could be able to be addressed, something that could actually bring a solution to the marketplace. And then you're going to defend it. You're going to bring in that, okay, now I gave you the fact. Let me show you why it matters for me. Let me show you why it matters for my product. Let me show you why it matters for my innovation. And you want to use peer-reviewed as much as possible, because they're going to believe in peer-reviewed. Those are experts. Those are people that put it forward an idea and had outsiders go, yeah, that actually is true. We believe that. It's not just opinions, because opinions are great, but opinions really don't matter in these proposals. You want facts, and you want to be able to have your opinion backed up by facts. I mean, yeah, it's still an opinion at the end of the day, but you have validity for your opinion. You have validity of why your opinion is actually right. Yeah, have a validity of why it's not really an opinion. And people should understand that it's a fact, it's data, it's information at that point. And one thing that people kind of overlook a lot is the types of facts that you draw together, the types of information. You not only need technical information, you need market information. Again, they want market solutions. They want things that are going to be able to be sold. They want things that people go, okay, I would buy that, and here's a strong market for it. Market data is going to be very hard to get peer reviewed, so kind of be aware of that. But find at least a few different sources that agree. If you find the same factoid that is repeated ad nauseum across 18 different sources, but they came from one person, it's not really a strong fact. Now, if you find 5 or 6 different organizations that looked at that same data point and came up with the same idea independently, then it's a strong data point. So kind of be aware of that when you're looking at citations, you're looking at references, you're looking at data, is the more people that independently agree that that's right, the stronger it is. If you just have something that a lot of people are repeating ad nauseum without looking at it, without diving into it, without, using their own brain to say, yes, this is actually valid, it's not a good data point. And it's going to show whenever these get reviewed. So now you have a scope, you have an outline, you have that foundation, you have some data points. What are you going to do? Well, start crafting, start building out your proposal. Don't try and write this all in one chunk. Again, whether it's a 10-page or a 25-page proposal package that you're putting together, it's a lot of information that you have to put down, and you have to make sure that it kind of flows together. You have to make sure that you're fleshing it out according to the requirements. Each agency is going to give you their review criteria, and at the heart of it, that's your Bible. It's what you're going to live, eat, and breathe throughout your proposal development process. Think of it like a grading rubric. When you were back in college, or maybe you're still in college, and teacher gave you that rubric and said, if you do this, you'll get an A. Well, that's what these review criteria are. And you want to treat it like that. You want to hit everything that they require. You want to hit the information in the way that they want it given to them, the way that they want it displayed. You want to actually go through and say, okay, they said that they're looking for this. Here is a statement that specifically says that, because that's what's going to lost my screen. Oh, there it goes. Because that's that statement that's going to go, okay, we see why this matters. This is something that is important. This is something that people can actually gravitate towards. This is something that really does matter. And that review criteria, that rubric, you want to get yourself an A, because A means that you get funded. Now, that established some, things that you should be aware of, that kind of process. How do you pull this together? What is some of the things that you need to think of? What are the things to actually get you started? So now that you know how to get started, well, what are just some general kind of tips, tricks, some best practices that you should be aware of and that kind of keep you moving forward? Let's actually, it's freaking out. Okay. So biggest proposal pitfalls. So what are the things that you really don't want to do within your proposal? What are the things that you go, okay, I cannot do this, I cannot show this. This is actually just going to ultimately sink me. And these are the things that really do keep people from getting funded. First is failure to demonstrate innovation. So this doesn't seem unique. This doesn't seem revolutionary. This doesn't seem like it's going to, change the world. You have to be able to demonstrate that. Overly ambitious, this actually gets back into scope. So you said, I can do all of these really amazing things with, this small amount of funding. My reviewers are going to look at that and go, no, they're not. Just because stuff happens. They know it's going to go off the rails. They know things are going to change. They know that your project's going to have to shift over time. And you go, okay, well, here's the thing. We need to be able to get this. We need to be able to actually move this forward. We need to be able to kind of showcase this. Lack of a hypothesis are measures of success. So not being able to show that I know what I need to do, I know what that goal is going to be, that if I can just get towards this number, this data point, that this is feasible. Okay. I'm not sure what happened there, but so lack of experimental detail. So you have to have an R&D plan that is very kind of specific. You have to have an R&D plan that really does showcase that I can move forward. Here are some things that I need to do. Here are some things that I need to be able to show. Here are some things that people need to be aware of. And then some absence of scientific rationale. So I don't have the data points. I don't have all of this information. There's not a lot that I can actually dive into here. If you are lacking that, backup, if you're lacking that, okay, well, science says that this can happen, then it's going to be one of those things that you're lacking that rationale, and it's going to keep you from getting funded. And just kind of failure to demonstrate that this is different. This is something that nobody else has done, or nobody else has approached, or nobody else has approached in the same exact way that you are doing, that you have done before. So those are all of the things that ultimately just keep people from being funded, keep people from being able to go, okay, this is something that I can actually do. This is something that we want to put money into. Because remember, at the end of the day, this is an investment. The government wants to invest into businesses that are going to move forward. So how do you navigate those pitfalls? Well, focus on the technical problem or the critical challenge. There needs to be some risk here. There needs to be something that you go, if I don't have this, if this is not funded through SBIR or STTR funding, then I might as well just give up right now. I might as well close up shop and not be able to move forward. Well, there has to be that aspect that this is unwieldy. You just really don't know, and you need this funding to continue development. That's how you demonstrate that risk. That's how you demonstrate that this is challenging. And that's how you demonstrate that, okay, I kind of know what I have to do. I don't have everything set in stone, because you don't have to have everything set in stone, particularly for a phase one. It's your best guess at continuing to move forward. And one of the big pitfalls that a lot of people kind of fall into is they think that if they throw in a lot of technical jargon, a lot of just, okay, these are these big $5 words because I scattered them throughout, people think that, I'm really smart, that I know what I'm talking about. One, you should be able to break down any idea into, grandma language. If you can explain it to your grandma and she understands it, then you're explaining it correctly. But two, oftentimes, maybe you're using the definition differently than the reviewers used to. Maybe they've not, seen that word. And maybe you're just throwing in so much jargon that technically it's right, but who's going to understand it? You have this example here. A bio-based homogeneous slurry is pressed into laminated sheets to accept carbon-based material transfer for information display. Well, that's really heavy in jargon. Sounds really, really technical. It means that you can write on paper with a pencil. That's all that means. And now, why did I not say that? Maybe I didn't understand the concept well enough. Maybe I couldn't explain it well enough. And anybody that's, sees that sentence is just going to be lost, and they're going to go, well, I don't get what they were trying to say here. Another kind of big thing, and this gets back to one of those big pitfalls, is not knowing who you're talking to and not speaking towards that agency's priorities and mission. And this gets back to one of the things we talked about earlier, is each agency has their own focus. Each agency goes, this is the type of stuff that I fund. These are the things and the activities that we're interested in. These are the products that we actually want to be able to bring to bear, to bring to market. And, you want to make sure that you're aligning with what their mission is, what they think is going to be important. Look at their 5-year plan. Each agency is going to have some sort of plan. That's what they hand to Congress to get their budget. So look at their plan. Pick up what they have in there. If you see something that they've repeated a few different times, then that word or that concept is very important to them. How can you speak towards that concept? How can you parrot some of that language? And then just kind of understand the ecosystem for your innovation. Ultimately, at the end of the day, why are you, stronger, faster, better? Why are you the state of the art? Why is your idea such an improvement on the things that have happened? Why did, prior people get this concept wrong? And what is it about what they got wrong that you say, that's a real big opportunity for me? Really quick side note, if you are going to talk about how other past researchers got something wrong, at least give an idea about what they did right in there. Say, this was really great, it had a strong foundation, but I think I can get a little bit better results by this. You never know who's going to be reviewing these. And that reviewer that you, or that researcher that you throw under the bus might actually be a reviewer. So always spin things towards some sort of positive. No matter if it's the things that have happened before, the things that you've done, the things that other people have done, even those risks, there is some positive that can be gained out of it. Always leave it on positive notes. What are some other things to kind of think of? What are some of those other missing links that just keep you from getting funded, make reviewers shake their head? And one of the things is not having that path forward. Yes, particularly for a phase one, you're establishing that feasibility, but these agencies and reviewers want to see that you're going to continue to develop it. You're not going to have a commercial solution off of a phase one. One, there's not enough time. Two, there's not enough money. So you're going to have to go on to a phase two. Are you going to have to go out for some outside investments, some, maybe venture capital dollars, maybe some procurement cycles with a government agency? You're going to try and develop a commercial product at the end of it. So you want to show that, okay, this is my first stop. Here's how I'm going to continue to move forward though. Here's how I'm going to continue this. Here's how I'm going to continue to grow. Here's what I'm going to do to make sure that I keep developing this, that there is something that I can use as a foundation here. And they want to see that I'm going to stick with this, because that's what you're trying to demonstrate here again, is just kind of that resilience. And one of the things that a lot of people will kind of, I guess, let's call it get wrong, is they leave things up to interpretation. They go, okay, well, here's what I'm doing. Here's why this should be interesting, but I'm going to talk about it in a little bit of vague language. And I'm going to, use that jargon and not really explain this concept very well. Interpretation is a huge, huge factor in SBIR and STTR proposals. And it is kind of your worst enemy. You don't know how that reviewer is going to kind of read that knowledge. You don't know what they're going to do with that information. You don't know how they're going to interpret it unless you point blank tell them the ways that they should interpret it. And you don't get a chance to, talk to the reviewer. It's not that the reviewer is going to be looking through your proposal package, pick up the phone, give you a call and say, hey, I didn't really understand what you were talking here on, page 7, paragraph 6. What did you mean by this? It has to be all encompassing. It has to be in that package that you send off. All that information has to be in there. So don't leave things vague. Tell them exactly why they should care and what they should be picking up from the information that you have in that package. And the way you do that is to kind of make sure that they're not hunting and pecking for information. This shouldn't be a treasure hunt. You want to address those 5 W's and 1 H throughout the proposal. There's always going to be a way that you can answer a who, or a what, or a when, or a where, or a how, or a when for each one of the aspects of your proposal package. Maybe you're thinking about, okay, well, how do I approach the work plan? When would I do this? Why would I do this? Put that information down. Somebody else is going to be interested in it too. When you're writing, kind of step back. If you were reading this as an outsider, what would be interesting to you? Why would you ultimately think that this is, pretty cool, that this should be funded, that somebody should be willing to invest money into this idea? And you're going to want to do that throughout, because if you step outside of yourself, if you approach it as an outsider, or maybe you give it to an outsider to review, that's also a really great kind of tip. Give it to somebody as the third party yourself, somebody from the outside that you go, okay, well, I'd be interested in getting a fresh take on this, because maybe you are falling into that, it's open for interpretation, or this is common knowledge. Maybe that knowledge isn't so common. You're going to want to make sure you're using a lot of really great tools that people will be able to move through the proposal. People will be able to figure things out, whether it's, making some storytelling decisions. We don't need Knights of the Round Table and Maid Marian storytelling, but just the way that you flow through information, the way that you give them those nuggets that you go, here's your breadcrumb trail to the ultimate, treasure here. And the treasure is, this is why you should fund me. And, the goal is that they see it and go, yeah, you should actually be funded. This is really amazing. This is going to change the world for some people or some aspects, or some parts of development or some domains. And a really great way to kind of also get over that hump with not being able to explain things well is use really compelling imagery. So imagery is something that makes your proposal stand out. Whether it's a block diagram, whether it's a table, whether it's a figure, whether it's a chart, that visual element, humans are visual creatures. We take information visually, we interpret it visually, and we spit it back out visually at times. It helps to kind of break up the flow, to make sure that things seem interesting, to make sure that things seem relevant, and it can also provide some credibility. Imagery is something that you can take a whole lot of words to explain a concept, or you can just put the concept down in a picture on paper, and then you know that the person is going to understand it, that they see how A to B to C link together for an ultimate, product or something at the end that brings those concepts together. But whenever you're doing that, make sure you're using imagery well. Make sure that that image can't be interpreted in different ways, and cite it. Bring in some citation, bring in some, just those little, okay, this is why this is important. Kind of do it in line, and then also things like a caption. You have this really great picture that shows how the plasma transference across the blood-brain barrier is going to equal a 20% absorption rate. Well, yeah, but it's a great picture. What should they pick up from that picture? Where are those little things, those little nuggets that you go, as you see from this point to this point and this point, then this transference rate is going to be X. Make sure you're explaining it fully, because you don't want to have stuff like this. What are you supposed to pick up from these images? What are you actually supposed to see? What's the reviewer supposed to see? What's the reviewer supposed to gravitate towards? Are they supposed to see, I think it's Marilyn Monroe, or the guy playing the saxophone in the middle picture there, if that wasn't obvious? What is that thing that they go, okay, this is interesting. This is why this matters. This is why this should be, unique. And, just kind of know that, yes, it's going to be hard to pull in things like imagery. Yes, it's going to be hard to pull in things like citations. This is unique. This is something that, okay, this is how we move this forward. This is how we actually grow from this. But it's also something that you're going to be using and linking together basic concepts. And that's what you're going to be doing throughout your proposal. So as you're pulling together those citations, what is that A plus B equals C? That data point of A, and then this other data point you bring in. If I can link these together, if I can show that there's some commonality between here, then I have science to validate this and to back this up. That can be tricky with citations, and that's something that you're really going to have to address is, what are the basic science concepts that I'm using as a backbone here to grow my innovation? Right? Pull quotes. If you have a quote, if it's been a peer-reviewed article, put in a quote there from, something that you published, or if it's an agency person, somebody that actually, published on this, somebody from NSF that goes, yeah, this is why this would be really cool. Pull a quote from them. Show that you're paying attention. Show that you know why they care about stuff like this. Show that you know why these types of solutions matter to them. So that was just kind of some quick overview style about, what are some things to be aware of whenever you're putting together a proposal package. How do you pull together information, and what's going to be your best source for knowing about that, for kind of going, well, I didn't really get this concept. Where can I find some of this imagery? Where can I find some of these citations? Well, if you're in New Mexico, reach out to the NMFAST program. We're established to actually provide that sort of assistance, to provide that sort of help, that sort of discussion, and to help you think through those things. we do things like proposal review. We have templates, we have resources. We do workshops like this. We put on events. NMFAS in New Mexico is your one-stop shop for SBIR and STTR support and development. And we have a lot of really great tools. We have a living library that has things like checklist, things like templates, things like compliance documentation, so that you're making sure that you're addressing those agency review criteria, that as you're developing your proposal package, it's a strong proposal. It answers agency needs, it's complete, and we want to be able to help you. We want to be able to assist you. We want to be able to help you move forward, because ultimately we want you to be funded. We want to matter in the innovation ecosystem, and particularly we want to help New Mexico businesses move forward. So you will get these slides, you will get this recording. It is one of the things that, we do these, we publish these, we put these out, and just reach out to us. You'll have my email address. Reply to me, send me a quick email, drop me a line and say, Del, I really didn't, understand this, or this is something that I would actually like to find out more from. This is something that I would like to be able to move forward with. And, at this time, I actually opened up the chat again and opened up people's microphones. I had to close it off to kick out the distraction there. But now, are there any questions that, we can address, that we can answer, that we can kind of go through? And any kind of final things that you go, I'd really like to find out more about this. William has a question in the chat. Should we contact the SBIR sponsors and run our ideas by them first? That's actually yes and no. And the reason I say yes and no is, just like everything else, depends on the agency. A granting agency like National Science Foundation or DOE, yeah, it's going to be really great to speak to one of their program managers and say, this is what I'm putting together. This is why I think it, falls within your criteria. Do you think that this, matches your agency's focus for innovation? There are some agencies like contracting agencies, DoD and NASA, who you can only reach out to at very specific times, and it can't be when the solicitation is open. For DoD, that's not a big thing, because they'll do a pre-release where their topics are out there. You can actually have a short time to get a hold of a topic author. For NASA, though, they don't do a pre-release on topics. Their topics are part of their solicitation. When the solicitation is open, you cannot contact a program manager or program officer. If it is outside of the solicitation window, definitely try to contact them. It's just your mileage may vary depending on the timing, depending on if the solicitation is open, as to whether they're going to respond to you. But yeah, I would definitely reach out to those program managers and say, hey, I'd like to be able to sit down with you, talk with you. Here's what I have. And send them a really quick concept paper, just a one pager, something that, introduces them into why this is innovative, why you think you have potential for commercial, and a couple of ideas of what you would do during a phase one, because that gives them a foundation to go, okay, can I have a conversation with this person? What would we actually talk about? If we have an online-based business, could we take advantage of the FAST program, or is it only for registered New Mexico-based businesses? Actually, it really depends. So NMFAST is funded by the SBA to help businesses in New Mexico go after these. We do have some limited capability to work with businesses in other states. The best thing to do, shoot me an email and I'll schedule a quick call with you. We can talk about it and see, okay, is this something that you're even remotely interested in being in New Mexico in the future? That you have some sort of business operations in New Mexico in some capacity. We do have allowances for working a little bit outside of the bounds, but it is very individualistic and kind of on an individual basis. So shoot me an email. You'll have my contact information whenever I send out the recording and send out the slides here. Aza, do I have to apply for step 1 before step 2? What do you mean by the step 1 and step 2? I'm not sure. If you could provide a little bit more explanation there. Nate, are concept ideas that we share with agency PMs protected info in any way? Nate, not really. So anything that you sharing with, the agency people, when it comes to things like patenting, it's probably not going to be counted as a public disclosure. But because it's not under an NDA, it might be. That's why it's always great not to share proprietary information. You should be able to talk about the concept from a 35,000 foot level anyways. For the agency people, they really don't care about the kind of secret sauce behind it. They don't care about the actual things that are going to drive it, make it different, make it innovative, make it unique, and just talk about it from a general level. This is interesting, to your agency because X. I'm doing something different because Y. You don't have to go into this is the exact way that I'm doing it differently. These are the exact way that it works. For most of them, at the end of the day, I'd hate to say it, but they kind of don't care how it actually works. They don't care if it's, something that is different in this very specific way, because as long as it's different, as long as it's unique, and you can talk about the uniqueness and the difference without, revealing everything to them. Oh, okay. Also from phase 1 to phase 2. For the most part, yes. There are some agencies that will allow you to do things like a direct to phase 2. NIH has a direct to phase 2 program. IES, which is the Department of Education, has one as well. DoD actually does have some direct to phase 2 where you can kind of skip over the phase 1. It's very, very hard to get a direct to phase 2. I always tell people, don't even bother. It is an astronomical, hill climb to actually get awarded a direct to phase 2. So it's always really great to go after phase 1 first. 2, there's almost always something that you could actually be developing, that you could be taking another look at, that you could be, finding out more information on for a phase 1. Because to even have a shot of winning a direct to phase 2, you have to demonstrate that anything that you could have even thought about doing for a phase 1, you've already done. You have that strong lineage for you, that you have all of the data towards. And that's the only hope that you have of winning a phase 2. So yes, some agencies will allow for a direct to phase 2, but it's going to be very, very difficult to win direct to phase 2. So I always tell people, look at some other aspect of the innovation for your phase 1 and go from there. Let's see, how can we see a grant schedule if there is one, showing what proposals are up and coming from the different agencies, e.g. in machine learning? So we do have a solicitation card. This is the thing I showed here. We have a digital version. This looks at the agencies kind of on a yearly schedule. When do they typically release? It doesn't go as deep into, okay, well, here are the different topics, William, because that's one thing that you will find, and that's one thing that, Dana had kind of about earlier in the chat, is there's a lot of crossover at times between different agencies. So like one of the things that you have there for machine learning, well, who's interested in machine learning? Pretty much every agency is interested in machine learning. Or data analytics. Pretty much every agency is interested in data analytics. Now, if it's something like, small wood timber, be USDA, probably NSF, maybe EPA, depending on how you're using it. But there's not a really good, okay, this is the thing that you're looking at doing. This is when the next agency cycle would be open. because that's one of the things that you have to do with these programs is you kind of have to think from a larger scale. Think from that 35,000 foot level of why would this agency potentially be interested? It's something that here at the NMFAST program, we actually help people with. So shoot me an email. Let's actually have a call and I can help you kind of navigate through that and decide which are the agencies that might be interested here. Even if you're not in New Mexico, we run monthly office hours where we will meet with people from any state, talk about whatever you're working on. We do have, you can find out about it on our website. There's a section on our website called office hours. Schedule an office hours session with us. Even if you're not in New Mexico, we're happy to talk during those office hours with people, no matter where they are, no matter what state they're in, kind of no matter what they're working on about these programs. Because that's why we do this. We believe in the SBIR and STTR programs. We think they're a valuable asset that every business should be leveraging if they're able to leverage them. Any other questions? Because if not, so this session was recorded. I will make sure to get the recording taken care of and posted out to people, along with a copy of the slides and some links to like our library where you can find that solicitation card, on our YouTube channel where we have tons of videos talking about SBIR and STTR, or even our Canvas learning modules about SBIR and STTR that are kind of that self-guided, self-paced dive into the programs and some overview information. We have a lot of tools. We want people to be able to use those resources. So every time we do one of these, we make sure that people have access to those resources, to those links, to that knowledge base. Because we've been doing this for 7 years now as an awardee from the SBA as a FAST awardee. So we have 7 years of information. Pick our brains, use our knowledge. Again, we think that these programs are a great value to businesses. We think that there's something that everybody should be taking advantage of. And if you need help figuring out how to take advantage of the SBIR and STTR programs, reach out to us. Shoot me an email, sign up for one of our office hours, sign up for another workshop session. We do these on the regular. Sometimes they're about general information. Sometimes they're about very specific topics, such as this one. You never know, but get added to our mailing list, get added to our email. We send out a monthly newsletter and just pick our brains. That's what we're here for. Let's see, one last question here. Ashley, are there any good resources, services to gather market research? So market research is one of the things that is always the hardest actually data point to gather for your proposal package. Scientific citations, things like that. Yeah, a lot of times you can find, okay, well, there's this article that, Professor XYZ published, but it's behind this paywall. You can reach out to Professor XYZ and request a copy of it. They're more than happy to send it to you. Market research, not so much though, as a lot of that market research is always hidden behind a paywall for the actual data points. One of the things that you can do though is go to some of the resource sites like IBIS World and look at some of their descriptions of, some overall market information. Particularly for a phase 1 proposal package, you need a general idea. You need some general information. And even in those, Google results or those description pages where it goes, hey, find out more information by paying us, $1,500, $2,000, whatever. Never pay for a market data report for a phase 1 proposal. Don't do that. You can actually get enough information to have some ideas that there's a strong customer potential, there's a strong market here. Now, when you go into things like a phase 2, then You can look at like the increased award amount for what they call TABA, or technical and business assistance, where somebody will do that market data, that market research for you. That's a really great resource to tap into. But even at least for that phase one, just finding out something through like IBIS World or, Market Watch, at least having that, here's what people said about this market, here's where some experts think that it's growing, at least gives you that stable kind of valid data point to go, here's what other people say, I'm not just making this up. And yeah, just market research is one of the things that it can be hard to get some good information without going behind somebody's paywall. And as Mike said, census data can provide some market insights. That is actually a really great point. Knowing, who is in an area, what is going to be your TAM, TOM, SOM, can you easily reach this market based on the geography, based on the region, based on who's there? You're going to link together those just kind of ideas on market stuff. We could do an entire presentation just on, figuring out market data, what you do to discuss customers, what you do to discuss, value proposition. Maybe that'll be a future session for one of these is what is market? What is market data and how do you grab it? Okay, so that is going to do us today, folks. Thank you for joining us. I'll try and get the slides and the recording out today to people. I'll do my best to get it out by this evening, if nothing else. But we hope that this was valuable to you. We hope that you gained some insights, some information, some knowledge on these programs, and just some of the things that you need to be able to do to bid together a complete and compelling proposal package.